Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm feeling very virginal in this outfit today. I'm feeling very much like, a bride being given off to her husband or a bride of Chucky, depending on if you fucking hate me. Let's get into it. Ethan Klein, also known as H3H3, which sounds like a highly infectious STD, has been going off recently on two particular individuals, Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan. We're gonna split this video into two halves. The first half talking about his attacks, although I would say they're more like brutal self-owns launched toward Jordan Peterson, and the second half will be his brutal self-owns on Joe Rogan. Ethan went off on Jordan Peterson on Twitter recently, and it really rubbed me the wrong way. Like, I have chafing just from reading these tweets. He also went back and deleted videos of an interview he did with Jordan Peterson from years back, in my opinion, out of the fear of being canceled by his own woke audience, which he does pander to, which he does and has cultivated throughout the years. Because Ethan, in my opinion, as sort of like a casual, every once in a while viewer of his stuff, is definitely one of those people who shapeshifts into whatever is trendy and socially acceptable at the time in terms of his content. He used to be way edgier.
I love that I can just say though. I love saying
way more anti-SJW, anti-woke, whatever you want to call it, whatever label you want to put on it. And now he's definitely the exact opposite. When it was more popular and trendy to be anti-SJW, edgy, whatever, you can bet your ass he was that. And now that it's more popular to be woke and super politically correct, you can bet your ass he's that. And these types of people always give the excuse of, well, I've evolved, I've grown, I've learned more. It's funny how they always evolve, grow, and learn more in the exact direction that gets them more popularity or is more socially acceptable, never in the opposite way. Like, they never all of a sudden have more controversial opinions or become more edgy. It's always with the wind, you know what I mean? So anyway, Ethan tweeted, "Years ago, I interviewed Jordan Peterson before I was very familiar with his politics. He was an interesting guest who I enjoyed sitting with." So right off the bat, this is just a lie. Jordan Peterson, at the time that Ethan interviewed him, was only popular for his takes on trans issues, which are definitely perceived to be controversial by people who are more left of center. So this was literally his claim to fame. Jordan Peterson became known because of his opposition to Bill C-16 in Canada, which we can do a whole video about Bill C-16, but the long and short of it was Jordan Peterson's perspective was that people would start being fined or jailed for misgendering people, for using the wrong pronouns, and the opposite side believed it was just a bill that was to increase the human rights of trans people. That's the long and short of it. So this is what he was known for at the time. Ethan had to have known that this is what he was known for, was controversial takes on trans issues. So this, like, I didn't know anything about him. Like, first of all, you probably shouldn't be interviewing people you know nothing about. And second of all, that was the only thing people did know about him at the time. So what the f are you talking about? The truth is he was fully aware of Jordan Peterson's politics. He just wanted the massive amount of views that this interview was going to bring him, and it did. And to this day, any interview Jordan Peterson does is going to get a massive amount of views. He is a very popular man. So you wanted the views, you wanted the money, but of course you don't have the integrity to say that. You're gonna lie and say, well, I didn't know much about him. Girl, bye. He goes on to say, but especially now, I can see he's a dangerous gateway to alt-right, transphobia, and COVID misinfo. I removed both interviews today. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the man who ran a podcast with Trisha Paytas is clutching his pearls over harmful speech.
Hitler can't be all bad if he had this big following.
Found out about the Holocaust?
I had no idea.
I really love movies and books about the Holocaust.
What's the stereotype about Jews? Like, my cheap Jew boyfriend with a big nose. I don't say that.
Jewish people are cheap.
But again, he didn't care because Trisha was making him a lot of money because at the time she was in the public's favor. So not only does this condemnation of Jordan Peterson that no one asked for, by the way, like no one was trying to cancel him for it, not only does it make Ethan look about as spineless as a jellyfish, his attacks on Peterson are also just not valid. First of all, if Jordan Peterson is the greatest sin, if Jordan Peterson is the gateway to being alt-right or being hateful, which by the way, I didn't know it was 2016, we were still using terms like alt-right, but okay. If someone as frankly apolitical as Jordan Peterson, because if you watch his content, he is almost always apolitical. He speaks to people on the right wing. I know that's such a scary thing. He definitely engages with them, but his actual content in his lectures are almost always, with some exceptions, apolitical. The majority of what Peterson talks about is self-help, self-improvement, getting your life together, philosophy, psychology, and he dips into politics sometimes, but to act as if that's the whole sum of who and what he does, and then to say that it's radicalizing people or some sort of gateway, we can just as easily say, Ethan, that you're a gateway towards what? Far leftism, communism, radicalism on the other side. Why is it only true ever of people right of center that they're too radical. And if Jordan Peterson is a gateway towards hate, what the fuck is this?
I love saying fat.
And I want to be very clear that this was obviously done in a comedic context. I'm not one of those people that thinks that context does not matter when it comes to slurs or curse words or whatever. Obviously, he's not calling someone that. It's done in a comedic context. I'm not personally mad. But going by your own standards here, if the benign, apolitical, self-help stuff Jordan Peterson does is a gateway to hate, then again, how can you claim that isn't? And perhaps Ethan's apologized for this, and if so, he definitely deserves to be forgiven. However, you just can't throw stones in a glass house. Let's move on to the transphobia accusation. He said that he's a gateway to transphobia, right? He said, your mischaracterization of Bill C-16 resulted in a surge of transphobia. The bill was created to add trans people as a protected group against hate crimes. Using the wrong pronoun would not result in anyone going to jail. In fact, to this day, 0 people have gone to jail. So don't even get me started with who is responsible for a surge in transphobia, because I have a pretty long list of people that Ethan would probably consider to be political allies that are actually responsible for people becoming annoyed or hateful towards trans people. And I know he would never condemn them because they're on his side politically. Because again, no concept that anyone on his side of the political aisle could be doing anything wrong. Not to mention, people have been put in jail for misgendering in Canada. You have here a Canadian man jailed for calling his biologically female child as daughter. And is that something that's widespread? No. However, if you're going to make the claim that 0 people have been jailed for misgendering in Canada, there's one right there. So you're just factually incorrect with that as well. He also accused Jordan Peterson of spreading COVID misinfo. Let's move on to that part of the accusation. So this happened after Jordan Peterson actually defended Joe Rogan after a list of 270 doctors condemned him for COVID misinformation, which, by the way, the word misinformation is almost always code for information I don't like, by the way, but that. However, he was absolutely right to defend Joe Rogan because, as it turns out, only 87 of those 270 doctors were actually doctors. The list was full of consultants, veterinarians, a social worker, podcast hosts, and some doctors, yes, but clearly it's just an attempt to slander Joe Rogan. It's just a baseless attack to say 270 doctors united against him, when in fact, that's just incorrect. So Jordan Peterson was objectively correct to defend Joe Rogan in that situation. And COVID misinfo coming from Ethan Klein is pretty rich, considering he said that the protests in the summer of 2020 didn't contribute at all to COVID, which you can agree with the protests and you can be on the side of the protest, but you can't deny that in the midst of a pandemic, tens of thousands of people getting in close contact in every major city in the country didn't really affect anything. Like, really? Really? But we know when it's politically convenient, your side can do literally anything. We got it. So you can poke holes in Ethan's arguments all day long, as we've been doing, but what does all this really mean, right? It means, like I said, first of all, he is afraid of his own woke audience canceling him, so he's trying to, in my opinion, get ahead of it and condemning him and saying, look, I don't actually support Jordan Peterson anymore, please don't cancel me, which again, spineless. And I have to just say, on a human level, Jordan Peterson didn't deserve this. He didn't deserve these attacks from Ethan. Jordan Peterson, from everything I can see, seems like a genuinely very nice man who helps a lot of people and has changed a lot of people's lives for the better. There's a huge problem in society, and people have to have such blinders on to ever see someone like Jordan Peterson as extreme. It's the same as people who call me far right. I did a stream with Joe Rogan on Timcast a few months ago, and I think it was Vice wrote an article calling me far right. If you think, I'm gonna speak in third person and kind of just invoke the sort of like public perception there is of me, like the sort of public figure version of my being, right? If you think Blaire White is far right, you have an extremely childlike view, an ignorant view of the actual opinions people on the actual far right hold. If you think I'm far right or Jordan Peterson is extreme, like you have no clue. And that's okay if you don't have any clue, but stop slandering people because you don't have a clue. So moving on to his attacks on Joe Rogan. So Joe, as of late, has been hosting doctors on his podcast and having questions and conversations about vaccines that honestly are just not questions and conversations you see in mainstream media, which unfortunately is the lens and the standards by which most people see the world. So he's had Dr. Robert Malone on, who is a virologist and the chief architect of the mRNA technology, as well as cardiologist Peter McCullough, and he's having conversations, he's asking questions. The gist, if you watch Joe Rogan's show, you would know that he doesn't claim to be any sort of expert on vaccines or viruses or anything. He simply asks questions. In fact, I went to one of his shows recently here in Austin, and he opened up by saying how stupid it was that people really saw him as some sort of health expert, that you have to be an idiot to take health advice from him, because he isn't an expert. He's simply having conversations, which in a sane world should be allowed. Joe has never once told people to not get vaccinated. And we talked about this even when I was on his show. He's never told anyone that. He's simply said that each individual person should have the freedom and autonomy to make their own decisions about their own bodies and health based on their own risk-benefit analysis, which again, in a sane world would not be radical, would not be something people should be attacking anyone for, right? He's always advocated, talk to your doctor and do what's right for you. In the meantime, I have questions. Questions should not be a sin. Questions should not be censored. We are living in a very terrifying time when you are not allowed to question things. So Ethan, who has in the past begged Joe to do his podcast, which is so typical of these very woke creators, by the way, I have a list of about 10 to 20 people who are on that sort of side of the YouTube sphere who have in the past asked me multiple times to come on their channel, work with them, kiss my ass, whatever, and then 6 months later have an I hate Blaire White video. Typical behavior of these little chihuahuas that want to bite at people's ankles and then I can't. So his attacks on Joe went as followed. Joe Rogan, who lives on elk meat, egg yolk, and human growth hormone with lungs full of tar, thinks he's healthier than everyone. First of all, that's like something a 5-year-old would say. You think you're healthier than everyone. He's never said anything as stupid as that. Maybe that's how your brain perceives it because you might be stupid, Ethan. Elk meat is healthy. Egg yolk is healthy. And human growth hormone, he's talked about being on TRT, he's talked about taking hormones. I take hormones. I'm a very healthy person. Lots of people take hormones. Menopausal women, men, trans women, trans men. Something tells me that if he were criticizing me, he wouldn't include my use of hormones in the attacks on me. So why would you do it to Joe? Why is it okay for someone like me to be on hormones, but not Joe? And the implication that elk meat and egg yolk is unhealthy, like what do you live on? Dairy Queen and chicken nuggets? Joe Rogan doesn't think he's healthier than everyone, but anyone with a set of 2 working eyes could see he's much healthier than you, Ethan. And if you think that sounds mean, why is it mean when people question Ethan's health, but not mean when they question Joe's? Is it because Ethan really is unhealthy and y'all know in your heart that Joe isn't? Exactly. And who gives a shit if Ethan is unhealthy? I don't care what he eats. I don't care how he lives his life. His lifestyle has no effect on me. However, again, you cannot throw rocks in a glass house. And I'm not taking health advice from either Joe Rogan or Ethan Klein because neither one of them are my doctor. However, if I had to pick one of them to be my doctor, it would definitely not be this one. He went on to say, this MFer is such a bitch that when he got COVID, he threw the kitchen sink at it. If you're so healthy, just write it out like you say a man should. Again, he's never said that. He's never said that. He's never said anything as stupid as men should write out COVID. It's like there's a filter on Ethan's brain that he can only perceive like the most childlike caricatures of people he's beefing with. And should we constitute what Ethan is saying here as COVID misinfo? Because vaccinated or not, when you do contract COVID or any sickness, a common cold, you are supposed to throw the kitchen sink at it. You're supposed to take vitamin D, zinc, vitamin C, eat healthy. Why is that something to attack someone about? What the fuck is wrong with you? For you to demonize throwing in the kitchen sink and taking vitamins, are you putting people at risk, Ethan? Are people gonna read your tweets and think that it's a bad idea to take vitamins when they're sick with anything, by the way? And tar in his lungs, Joe doesn't smoke cigarettes. And if it's a dig about smoking weed, then we're demonizing weed too? What is wrong with you? List of things Ethan Klein has no concept of: eating healthy, smoking weed, taking vitamins. Good to know. What this all really comes down to is I genuinely feel bad for anyone, especially kids who are watching Ethan Klein or reading his tweets and thinking in any way that this guy knows what the fuck he's talking about almost anything. Because I haven't seen one thing in all the tweets I've read for him, one even small aspect of what he says that has any validity or truth behind it. You almost have to try this hard to be wrong. A normal person is accidentally wrong about things. Ethan is almost intentionally I'm just gonna pick the worst possible takes. I'm going to say the exact opposite of what is true, and I'm going to completely mischaracterize everyone. And honestly, when exactly did it become the standard that rather than countering someone's speech, debunking them, proving them wrong, when did that switch to Actually, we have to silence our opponent's speech. We have to censor them. We have to erase them. We have to pretend as if they didn't say it rather than say something back to them. What you're really doing is actually proving that your ideas, your opinions, and your stances have no merit whatsoever. They can't stand up on their own. And honestly, Jordan Peterson is not the smartest person on the planet. Joe Rogan is not the healthiest person on the planet, but Jordan Peterson is smarter than Ethan Klein, and Joe Rogan is healthier than Ethan Klein. And that's on period. Love you guys. Make sure you subscribe to this channel as well as my second channel. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram because I post on there way more than I do on here. So you gotta follow those to keep up with me. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.